So hello again, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of lockdown webcasts that we are bringing to you from Travel Weekly while you are all working from home. We're trying to keep you all connected with some of the key people in the industry and covering some of the key issues. So I'm delighted today to be joined by three people who are leading suppliers in the industry. So I've got Oliver Brendon, who is the founder and chief executive of ATD Travel Services, which is attractiontickets.com and DoSomethingDifferent.com. I've got Paul Carter, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Hotelplan. And I've got Jo Rzymowska, who is the UK, Ireland and Asia Managing Director for Celebrity Cruises. So welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us. We've been doing lots and lots of these webcasts, a lot of them with agents, obviously, different agents right on the front line, whether they're in retail or home working, and a lot of them have been talking about many issues they're facing, but without question they have said that the whole issue around cancellations and refunds is the single most pressing and important issue for them. So I don't want to shy away from that. I think we should get straight to that issue, and I thought it'd be good first of all to go round and talk to you about what policy you adopted and whether that you've kept that same policy since from the outset. Clearly things have been changing all the time and lots of people have had to update it. And that's been one of the things agents have said, is that everyone's doing something different and almost every day there's a change they've got to keep abreast of. So I'll start with you, Jo, because you were on our very first webcast actually 5 weeks ago. And so it'd be interesting to know what you've been doing and if things have changed at all. So I'll start with you and we'll go round.
Yeah, what a difference 4 weeks makes. I didn't know what Zoom was, and here we are now living by it. So thanks, Lucy. Thanks for having us on, and hi, everybody. We very quickly launched our Cruise with Confidence programme, which basically was either offering the customers a choice of either taking a refund of 100% of the cruise value or offering them a future cruise certificate to the value of 125%, so 25% value add. And we started that program literally when we last spoke about 4 weeks ago, as we went into the situation that we're in and the world changed. It also protects the agent's commission on the original booking and on the new booking. We're getting overall good feedback from that point of view. It does mean also that if a consumer does choose the future cruise certificate, and at any stage they want to change that to actually having a refund, then they have the opportunity to do that. So it seems to be working for us. We're getting good feedback overall from both the consumers and the trade, and we will continue to review it because it's a changing world.
And can you tell us what your percentage of rebooks is versus people taking refunds?
We've got over 50% pickup on the future cruise certificate. It's actually still quite early.
Yeah.
People are still making those decisions. But what we're finding is because we've put in the 25% value add, then there is really an encouragement for people to take the future cruise certificate.
Okay, and then you haven't changed that at all in the last 5 weeks. That was what you came out with initially and you've kept it at that. So there's been no changes. Okay, all right. Thank you, Jo. Paul, shall we come to you and find out what you've been doing? Of course, you've got quite a few different brands within Hotelplan, so I'm interested to know what you've done for each of them, or whether it's been a sort of a blanket approach.
Yeah, no, hello, and hello everybody out there. Well, Lucy, it was probably 7 weeks ago we were in Italy, wasn't it? Before it all kicked off, and Italy's where it was hardest hit in Europe. I know it started on the cruise lines with Princess, but I think, well, let's take the position. Because we, Ingham's and a couple of our ski brands, did get some negative feedback in our original position. We never said that we wouldn't do refunds. Our first response has always been to encourage the customer to move to next year or accept a voucher credit. I think there's a bit of a difference between those who are due to travel shortly and have paid their balance and are ready to go. And we've been working really hard with our agent partners to try and protect their commission. But we've always said it's possible to get a refund, and that's something that we've been doing. In terms of the take-up and the offering, we don't have the same margins that cruise lines do, so it's not as rich as a a 20 or 25% credit. So if I talk through the different brands within the portfolio, so In Travel is a largely direct business. We'll talk about which in a little while, because they regularly win the best tour operator, best specialist operator in which. They have been doing a £100 per person credit as incentive. And initially they were getting about 75% take up of that. That's down to about 50%, and they rushed the summer 21 out early. Explore, and Joe and Ben and the team there, we are offering credits out until the end of 22, and we're getting about 40 to 45% take up. And the take up is exactly the same, whether it's a direct customer or indirect. 20% are saying they're rebooked for later in the year, and the rest are asking for the money back. And then on the Mountain House, the ski businesses, skiers who were due to travel the next week, and a number of their circumstances changed. That's been a bit more difficult, and we've been working really hard with some of the specialist ski agents, like the likes of Igloo. We're not at 50%. It's lower than that. But on the summer program on Ingham's, we launched early. We've been up on sale for a couple of weeks. This week we've been getting above the 50%. So, and I think the feedback I'm seeing is the people who are traveling further out, because what we did is we reduced the balance payments down to 4 weeks. Yeah. That's helped. But I think the customers who are being proactive and saying, I don't want to travel and going in June and July, we are still planning operations in July and August at this stage, but we're offering them the chance, and they are moving more with that.
Okay. And sorry, just to pick up on the first thing you said, Paul, you said you got a little bit of negative feedback first of all. So why was that then?
Well, I think like everybody else, we weren't explicit as we were working through. I think ski was at the vanguard of this, because we were
right in the middle of the
season, and it was a bit like do the okie dokie on the ski holidays, because the borders were shutting while we had people, so we had curtailments. In Italy, we had the French saying, we're open, and then we were flying people out and flying back. So we've had the whole issue to deal with. Yeah. Curtailment and reinvestment of that. So
right. So just it was moving very quickly, and you had to make some changes.
We were in a heated battle, and it took us a few days, and I think we were on iteration 3 or 4 now, but that's kind of landed and is working better.
And it now seems, and you're okay, and you're getting good response. All right, Ollie, let's bring you in. A different type of business, obviously. You're a ticketing, a sort of theme park and attractions ticketing specialist. So explain what you did from the outset and how that's been working.
Yeah, we've had the same policy from day one. On the direct side, on attractiontickets.com, we sell both packages. So we sell hotel and ticket packages, normally theme park hotels, plus the tickets. That constitutes a package, and we've abided by the package travel regulations on those. All customers that wanted a refund travelling till 30 June have had their money back within 14 days. Thought it best to stick to the law if we could, and we could. All I do realise that not all travel companies are in that position to be able to, but we have managed to refund those, and obviously that has gone down well. A very high pickup of refunds compared to amendments, I must say. Free amendments were available from our suppliers, but most companies did want their money back. On ticket only, we don't have to abide by the package travel regulations, obviously, and we've offered customers free amendments to 2021, or we've offered them 80% of their money back. And we reduced our cancellation fees. It could have been up to 100% or 50%. We've capped them at 20, and really to encourage customers to amend rather than cancel. We couldn't have coped with the deluge of refunds. We had around about £40 million worth of business travelling in March and April. We couldn't have coped with that. We're not getting full refunds in cash quickly or even at all from some of our suppliers. Some have been very good and refunding us, but they're taking between 12 and 14 weeks to actually arrive because of the amount of furlough happening in the US and with our suppliers. So we offered 80%. refunds. That's generally gone down well. Some customers do want to speak to me about it, and I'm very happy to do so, to explain it a bit more. And we have relaxed them for certain bookings where there's healthcare workers on, for example, or where members have lost or parties have lost a member of the party due to COVID. And there's been exceptional circumstances where we've relaxed them a bit, but generally it's been 20% cancellation fee if they want to cancel, and about 70%.
Sorry, I was going to say, and where then you've offered 80% of the money back or an amendment, have you got a better pickup there of people amending? You know, you said you actually had more.
70% are amending, because they don't want to pay the cancellation fee, which is understandable. So they've predominantly amended, and then those that want a refund, they've had it within 2 to 3 weeks. Just the volume we're getting, about 150 a day, and it's quite a laborious process with tickets because we have to have the tickets back. We've had teams in who have to pick them up, distribute them to all our furloughed workers, and so the process has been quite onerous. And then on the trade side, we don't have cancellation fees for trade, so they have all received a full refund. Some agents have prepaid us, and we've either refunded their money or given them a credit, whichever they wanted, depending on their volume of business. Some hadn't paid us yet, so it's just been scrubbed from their bill. We don't charge cancellation fees.
Okay, all right, fine. Now, Ollie, obviously we need to pick up on a story that we ran this morning. You sent a letter yesterday to ABTA, and we ran a story about that because you are not comfortable with ABTA's position or how they're lobbying of government, I guess, for an extension of the, or a relaxation, sorry, of the package travel regulations, and obviously the date now, this extension that refunds can be, or these refund credit notes can extend out to. So do you want to just explain that?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you can just give me a few minutes to go through it, I think that'd be useful. So, I mean, I agree with ABTA on a lot of things. I agree that the 14-day window is probably unrealistic due to the volume. I agree that law probably wasn't designed for scenarios such as this, and customers who want to cancel probably need to show some patience. There's a high volume, and there's a high level of complexity. I agree that it's a difficult balance between protecting jobs in the industry and protecting consumers. And I agree with their position that travel companies should be refunded with undue delay. I agree with all that. And I agree that the regulatory window probably does need extending, but why have they come up with this date of 31 March 21? A year for refunds is going to do enormous damage to ABTA, enormous damage to the industry, and trust within it. And almost beyond repair, I think. You just listen to customers. I do wonder how many customers ABTA have actually spoken to. I speak to customers every single day, and they are heartbreaking stories. You know, healthcare staff, as I mentioned, groups who have lost a family member. I've spoken to customers who have had their previous holiday cancelled through the Thomas Cook demise, and now have had this holiday disrupted. People want their money back, and to wait a year for it it's just not acceptable. I think that the position that they keep coming out with is just really contradictory. That they say they want to preserve consumer confidence. Yeah, agree with. But you can't say you want to preserve consumer confidence and be lobbying for a year delay in refunds. Those two things are mutually exclusive. They do not work together.
So of course, they're sorry, Ollie, to interrupt, but I'm just to be devil's advocate, because obviously we put this to them yesterday, and their response is that the date of a year out is the expiry date of the refund credit notes, but they are saying they're not endorsing people paying refunds out to that date. They're saying, and the words were that they want companies to make those refunds without undue delay.
Yeah,
so they're expecting that to happen quickly. Of course, I understand that does leave a grey area, and there may be companies that will say, oh, okay, that's carte blanche for me to pay them right at the end of that period. And I do understand that, but I think ABTA is very trying to say that no, we don't expect those refunds to be made right at the very end of the extension.
But that has no legal clout. They don't have any legal clout. So yes, some companies will abide by their guidance and refund without undue delay. There is a big group of companies who are just simply ignoring law as it stands. So those companies are not suddenly going to look at the law, the legal position, say the last date for refund is 31 March, and suddenly think, well, actually now we'll start following the ABTA guidance of refunding without undue delay. that's not realistic. It's not the real world of how many companies are trading. There is a big group of travel companies just choosing to ignore the law. They're ignoring the tough choices. They're ignoring the mistakes and the greed of the past. Their leverage was debt. They got greedy on the multiple when they sold to PE. They've paid huge dividends with, it turns out, customer money. And those shareholders need to put their hands in their pockets. They are big enough to raise equity, to raise debt or capital via equity sales. And that is, that's these PE houses. I'm sorry, welcome to the travel industry. It is risky, it is volatile, and customer cash is not your cash. They need to be repaying those dividends. They need to be going out to debt markets. They are big enough and ugly enough to do it. They're just choosing not to. And
let's bring the others in then. Sorry, Ollie, I don't want to interrupt, but it'd be interesting to see what the views of the other two are. Do you have any sympathy with Ollie's point that the position that ABTA is taking, and that obviously some are going to abide by it, it'll be fine, but others might take the mick a bit of that because it's not legally binding? Do you think that has potential damage to the reputation of the industry?
So I think ABTA is in a really, it's trying to balance, right? It's trying to balance the consumer protection and also not wanting, there's no benefit to the consumer on numerous travel businesses going under either. So I think there is there's a difficult balance that they're trying to do. I don't think there's any kind of maliciousness. I think trying to balance what's best for the consumer. And at the end of the day, the consumer wants a refund. They absolutely have to get a refund. As Ollie said, the 14 days is good on you, Ollie, for managing the 14 days. You're one of the few, I think, that probably is. We're currently running at about 30 days. We're putting on lots more staff to make sure that we can achieve that. And we're there to pick up the phone and people can get hold of us within 28 seconds on average. That's a key thing. I think the frustration of a lot of companies is they can't get hold of people. And everything I'm talking about here is across our brands, so the RCL Corporation. So I do think there is a balancing act. I think we've got to be careful about, from a future point of view, is that the consumer could also be in a worse position then if the organisation isn't there as well. A year does seem like a long time, but I do think it is more based on, from ABTA's point of view, of when the consumer can actually then claim that refund credit note. I do think that's what the plan is. Therefore, however, to Ollie's point, if people do play the system, that's not great for the consumer, and how are we going to ensure that? I think from our point of view, that's why from the go-get, we've made sure that they've got the option. They can get the refund or they can get the future cruise credit, and we're incentivising the consumer, of course, to take the future cruise credit with a 25% added value. But that's sort of where I am on it.
Okay, Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I'm more on the Joe side. I think ABTA do have a very difficult job. They are representing consumers, but they're also representing the industry. And the industry pay their subscriptions. Number of companies have bonded through ABTA. We, less than 10% of our bond is through ABTA. Our CA bonds go elsewhere. They won't have an industry to represent without this. I think the other piece, so I agree with pretty much everything that Joe has said, but I think the other piece that is the very difficult balance is on the chargebacks. So the credit card chargebacks is something that is starting to bite as people get frustrated. So we need some clarity on what that is, because that could snowball in the wrong direction and hurt agents for operators that aren't refunding or they're not accepting the credit note. So I think it's a very complicated situation.
It is complicated, and we had Julia Lobu-Saif, the chief executive of Advantage, on here the other day, saying that she had written to suppliers to say in no uncertain terms that it was not an agent's legal responsibility to pay a chargeback. That would be pushed back onto suppliers. But what are you asking for then, Paul? You're saying you need some clarity, but what are you looking for?
Well, I think, again, a year out is a long time. I'm looking for some clarity because I work for a European organisation, and my boss in Switzerland, a bit like Joe's boss in the States, is going, well, why is it different in Germany? Why is it different in other countries? And we've seen other markets move. So I think the challenge has been the expectation, and people have been waiting. A number of operators have been waiting for that clarity to come from government so that they can stand legally behind this. And that's the piece that everyone's waiting for. I mean, I'm behind the ABTA stance. You know, I'm a supporter of what Alistair has been doing. Our business is owned by a cooperative, so you know, much like Ollie says, we're not playing with customer money. We're trying to do the right thing in the place. So I'm at a slight advantage to others in the industry, which aren't as highly leveraged. We're trying to do the right thing, but we're also trying to preserve the cash. So we have a business that is sustainable, that can support the customers through the years. You know, we've been around for 85 years. We've been around while the Second World War was going on, with no business for 5 years. It's really difficult. So I'm more on the Joe side. Ollie, I like what you're saying, but you know, I think pragmatism has to take.
Okay, well let's let Ollie, I guess, finish up this little section. Ollie, you pointed out that you agree with a lot, but you know the current position that ABTA's taking, you say, just isn't legally binding. So what would you like to see, just so we can be clear on? I know we know what you don't agree with, but what is it you would like them to be doing, or what would you like to see, and then we'll move on.
Just a more sensible time limit. Telling customers to wait a year for their money is unrealistic. I mean, and unacceptable to most. There's 3 companies on this conference call that are all refunding customers well within that period. So I'm not quite sure why then the other 2 think that a year is necessary. It's not necessary. It is absolutely not necessary. And if, you know, there are 4 groups really. Those unable to refund customers at the moment have a lot of sympathy. They're smaller, perhaps frontline agents and smaller tour operators, have a lot of sympathy with them. But 3 or 4 months, 5 months is enough time to get money flowing if ABTA would focus on the right area, which is predominantly getting airlines to refund and suppliers to refund agents. There's another group just unwilling to refund, probably could afford to. It's going to cause them some discomfort, and it's going to probably cause some redundancies in their organisations, but the redundancies are inevitable after furlough anyway in the travel industry, and they need to be pushed to refund. There's the other group, which I mentioned before, the third group, which are predominantly PE backed, and could and should be going out to their shareholders to raise more money to refund customers. And there's a fourth group, to be honest, they probably couldn't survive any crisis. And I'm sorry, some companies are going to go into administration. They cannot all be saved. I don't want any company to fail, because it's heartbreaking for them and their employees. But that is the reality of this situation. Some ideas are not viable. Some companies are not that well run. Business owners not focused enough. That's capitalism, and that's going to be a result of this crisis. They've got sometimes admit defeat. Try again once it's all over. Maybe they'll have better luck next time. You know, that is just the reality of it. So what would I like? I'd like them to stick to their original date, which was 31 July. Maybe put it out till September, get the summer over. But there is going to be a serious backlash from customers if a lot of them, and a lot of them will, have to wait a year for their money back in very, very distressed.
Okay. Well, we were hoping for some guidance this afternoon. I'm not sure. We haven't seen that yet as coming on this call. At the time of this call, we haven't seen that yet. But if not today, then the indication is there'll be some guidance from the government coming. And
we're full members. We're full ABTA members and bonded for ABTA as well. I mean, that's my concern. You know, I'm worried about how viable and valid their brand is if they're going to be lobbying for this, and customers are well aware of it as well. You only got to look at social media and what's going on. They're well aware of what ABTA are doing, and it's not going down well. So then you've got to wonder how valuable being a member is. We pay vast sums to be a member of this club, and they're not looking after consumers. I think they've just got the balance wrong. And it was their date. Their date was 31 July. Why has it suddenly jumped 8 months in the future?
Okay, well, we're hoping to get ABTA on one of these webcasts next week, Ollie. We'll put all of those points to them, as we did when we got your letter yesterday, and they responded in the way they did, which you saw on the story this morning. But I'm conscious that we've got other things to talk about, so I appreciate it was a good discussion, but let's move on to other things, because obviously, you know, there is a lot of concern about the current situations that agents and operators are in, but you're obviously all hoping that at some point we will come out of this and we'll move into a post-coronavirus world. And I'm interested to know what you're doing now. None of us have got a crystal ball to know when things are going to restart, but I imagine you are putting some plans in place. We've had people talking about maybe things will start in the summer. Paul said himself he's still got July and August that you're hoping to have operations, and then you've got the ski season fast approaching. So that's quite an optimistic view. Jet2, EasyJet, they think they're going to start flying in June. Do you think it's going to be that soon? I mean, then they've got other people who think, don't even think about it, it's not going to be till next year. So where are you on that, where are you on that sort of scale of when things might come back? What are you planning for, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, $60 million question, right?
It changes every week. I honestly don't know. We have some customers who want to travel. You ran a piece from Debbie Marshall saying, there's no place like home. As soon as we can get out here, we want to go. I think it depends on the customer demographic. I think it depends on the holiday type. So some segments will come back earlier. Within the Hotelplan group portfolio, we've got Interhome, which is holiday homes, and the idea of people getting in their cars to stay in a rental accommodation where they can do that. The view from our company is that will return more quickly. I don't know whether we'll have a summer operation. It really depends on the destination and the country. As some countries are starting to emerge, the restrictions are starting to lift, that will depend, but it depends on the consumer appetite.
Yeah.
We're in our financial year, so it's we end in October and our next financial year starts in November, and one of our biggest programs is sending people to see Father Christmas. With Santa. I know you've done that with your family. That's, if the recession hits hard, and as Ollie said, a lot of people are going to get made redundant. We've got strong forward bookings for those programs, but the truth will come when the balance payments are due. And we won't be. We're having lots of conversations around should we scale that program back. So it's discussions with suppliers, with aviation partners, with clauses in our contracts that allows us to be more flexible. I think skiers are tending to be a bit more resilient. I think the family market will probably be harder hit than others. Paying $5,000 for a family holiday against $1,500 for your own trip on a ski holiday. So we are planning various scenarios, but it won't be the same size as last year.
The skiers will still go, but they won't take their kids because it's too expensive.
I'm not
I quite like that plan.
No, I just think, and it may be different. So there'll be more people who want to stay in self-catering apartments. The drive thing. We don't know. We've had Michael O'Leary talking about rubbishing what Johan said about having the middle seat. So we don't know how the social distancing is going to happen. But I do think, the more independent side will come back more quickly. And I am more optimistic about next summer. I think the big worry for everybody is, what does the recovery look like? Nobody's talking about a U or a V shape anymore. It's a W or an L. From what I'm reading and hearing from elsewhere, it's going to be a couple of years before we get back to normal, whatever that normal is.
Whatever normal is. All right. Well, you mentioned the family market there, Ollie. That's obviously your core market for attraction tickets. So what's your prediction or plan? What plans are you able to put in place?
It's tricky, isn't it? So we keep doing different scenario planning, worst case, best case, likely case. The likely case keeps then becoming the worst case as the news gets worse and worse. So we're pretty much writing off 2020 just as a sort of likely case in terms of travel and demand, really, because it's difficult to imagine people wanting to go into theme parks. And there are going to be quite stringent measures in place in those parks with social distancing and other things that they're planning that we've heard about. So I'm not sure there'll be a huge amount of demand.
Are you able to share? Are you able to share any of those, Ollie? Just out of interest, because do you mean in terms of queuing? Because I mean that's you're obviously in close proximity, aren't you, with queues, getting on rides and things.
I think some of it's public. So I mean social distancing in terms of keeping people apart. I think they're going to be taking the temperature of guests as they go in. all quite disruptive, and other things as well. So yeah, I'm not all that confident, optimistic about this year. I mean, what are we doing at the moment? We've kept some marketing people on, and we're working hard on creating some really cool, inspiring content for social media, because we just feel like it's going to be like a startup environment again. I think Steve Endicott mentioned it earlier, and I'd agree with him. You know, it's starting again. It's creating the demand. It's top of the funnel marketing to try and create that interest. So we've got some really cool social content that we're working on. So that it's not appropriate for now, but hopefully will be at some point. There's too many unknowns. The competitive landscape is unknown. The customer reaction to when this is all over is unknown. It could be that they want to stay at home and they can't afford to go anywhere, or it could be just a sense of relief and let's go and book something big and get out there and thank the kids for doing their work, or not in the case of mine. But yeah, and we don't know what the government measures will be. We don't know what the quarantine measures will be in the source markets. There's just too many unknowns. What we did see, one little thing which filled me with a bit of hope, in Disney came out with a policy which gave customers 5 days to pay their balance for 2020, which would mean their tickets are valid for 2021. So they gave us very little notice period, and we sent the email out with a bit of trepidation actually to all of our database of customers who are on deposit for 2020, and told them if they want to pay their balance and extend the validity of their tickets to 21, they had 5 days to do it. We had a really good take up, £3.5 million of balance payments in that 5-day period, and then we worked on dispatching those tickets. So that was quite encouraging. Showed good quality of demand. It showed that there is a desire to go at some point and see the holiday through and do it at some point. But a lot of people obviously didn't respond at all. So it's tricky. And what we're finding is any communication to our customers comes with unintended consequences. So if we're asking for money for the right reasons, they assume we're going bankrupt, and you can't ever seem to get it quite right. And that's the sort of state of mind that people are in. So we're finding really the least we communicate, the better almost at the moment. Although, as with Jo, we're not quite on the amazing response time that she is in terms of our call centre, but we're on a minute and a half response time. So we're open and we're talking to customers, and yeah, at the moment it's just battening down the hatches, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, Ollie, let's bring Jo in. And I've spoken to lots of cruise bosses actually of late. And again, it's very hard, isn't it? I mean, as you know, people are saying, until you know what the social distancing rules will be, it's hard to know how cruise is going to emerge from this. But what are you doing in your teams and your planning?
So we're spending a lot of time on on our whole return to service plan, and what I'm calling it sort of BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. And really working on making sure that, you know, the comeback is stronger than the setback. And it's not easy. It's highly complex. It's working with governments around the world. It's working with ports around the world, and working through really sort of 4 key areas. So the first thing is obviously deployment, when and where. And again, every plan you write, you then rip up and change again, but you constantly plan for that. And things are constantly evolving. I mean, interestingly enough, you know, Asia was one of the first to close down. Potentially, Asia is going to be one of the first to open up. The benefit that we have is we do have assets in the industry that we can manoeuvre around the world. But as with Clear, we're working very closely together on a strong return to service plan. And then the key thing, obviously, the protocols within that. So the reality is this is the cruise industry's equivalent of 9/11. And what happened after that, much as it was quite frustrating and we had to adjust to it, but actually, as travellers, we were pleased to then see that there's limited liquids, taking your shoes off, can't go into the cockpit. And all of that is being aggressively worked on together as an industry, and then within RCL Corporation, across the 4 brands as a corporation, to go, as we always do, above and beyond. You know, we never really spoke massively about our health and safety protocol before. We focused more on the joys of the emotional connections of destination, what happens on board. But that now will be massively heightened within the industry from Clear and then from us as a corporation. So that's another big piece. And We're probably a few weeks away from announcing all of that. We're working very closely with the CDC on that, the Centre of Disease Control, and UK Public Health, etc. All of the equivalents around the world. So that's the other second part. The third point then is the messaging, consumer engagement, and interestingly enough, we have a massive loyalty base again across the brands. They want to hear from us. And we've actually gone out to them, and Lisa Lutoff, our president, every time that there is, about every 4 weeks, she's writing to them. And we went out and said to them, do you want to hear from us or don't you? And interestingly enough, the majority said, yes, we absolutely do. The content needs to be appropriate. They want to engage with us. You know, we still have crew on board the ships, so we're actually doing engagement from the ships and on board the ships. And our loyalty guests want that. So that's another key thing, keeping engaged with our loyalty guests, but working out our appropriate messaging for once we then really start to market again. And social content, I think, is key. And then the fourth part, and probably the most important part, is our trade engagement. And I think, Lucy, as you know, we launched RCL Cares this morning. It's a dedicated website. We had launched RCL Cares in the States. And within a week, we've adapted it and it's up and running here. Again, it's a joint effort across all 4 brands. And quite simply, in one place, it gives all of our agent partners everything to do with our Cruise with Confidence, everywhere all the information they can get on how the world is changing. And as and when we go back into service, that's where they will go to get all of that information. It links them through to all the government information. It links them through to the ABTA information. I'm sure Ollie's delighted about that. And also very much, though, engagement from the brand. Again, you know, the live chat that we've launched, the contact centre information, and we're finding live chat has been a great approach for the trade partners. So really, you know, we're very focused. I know we can all batten down the hatches and it's doom and gloom. This is an unprecedented time. This is an extraordinary situation. Outside of a war, none of us have lived through anything like this. And interesting enough, talking to a friend of my mother's, and my grandparents died in Auschwitz, and she's still alive, this friend of my mother's not. And I said, you lived through the war? And she said, Jo, I did. But you know what? We could go and give each other a hug. We could go and look after one another. Here we can't. This is unprecedented times, but we will get through it. We are people that want to connect and want to travel. We will work through it. It's highly complex, but we are very much focused on getting ready to return to service and supporting our trade partners through that and engaging with consumers through that. And I know the industry will get there.
Well, it occurred to me just before you all came on that you were all winners of Globe Awards this year, as voted for by the trade. So I was going to ask about how you were keeping your engagement going with the trade, who clearly thought very highly of you before. And I was wondering, you know, I mean, I'll come back to you, Ollie. You said that your customers don't want to hear from you, but what about your trade partners? Are you still keeping in touch with them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the direct customers do, from just very light-hearted and social, the right social content is fine. It's just sending out any kind of message on email to them about what's going to happen to their booking in the summer. It's just impossible. So it's almost better saying nothing. Yes, we are keeping in touch with the trade. The DSD team has shrunk a bit, but we still kept, I think there's still 6 of them on. And we're getting surprising amount of bookings from the trade actually for 2021. Hayes are very active. I think they unfurled a lot of their staff, didn't they? So they seem to be booking well, and there's obviously a lot of amendments going on. And yeah, I think I'm quite confident about the trade and the trade coming back.
And Paul, sorry.
Yeah.
Paul,
So I'll talk about customers and trade, and you know, in terms of the messaging, we are talking to them in the right way. So the content is just sharing interesting, relevant, and inspiring content. It's no hard sell.
Oh, we've slightly lost you. Maybe sit near your microphone.
Okay, sorry, I'm sitting back.
Yeah, come on, stop slacking.
We're regularly engaging with our customers through social posts and emails, simply sharing interesting, relevant, inspiring content. I mean, you know, we've all got stories of really loyal customers, and I know Cruise have their clients, and we all know our best customers personally. So I got one really heartwarming. We sent out a keep dreaming email last week, and this guy who regularly writes to me, he's been a customer for years, said, look, I loved your latest post, so appropriate in these darker moments, the memories of my holiday in the Alps. We've been looking at our pictures after your email. Take heart, it's timely. Be assured we're still out there. Stay healthy, and we will return to the mountains with you next year. So I've got that. I heard from another guy who's booked 3 holidays with us this year. He's rebooked all of them for next year, and he's doing his cruise holiday, and he's going to Spain. So, I take some heart in that, but yes, it's not hard sales. The second thing is actually keeping in touch with the agents. I didn't talk about our response times. I mean, we've furloughed about half our customer service teams, and we're managing with what we have, and agents are happy with that. I think I've got some feedback. I rang around, and Julie and Ben at Explore have been talking to customers. So we're keeping them informed about the program, the shapes, and we're sharing information and so on, and they appreciate it. And we hear from some of the agents who are on their own, and I say it's so nice to hear from you. So I think the agent engagement is really important, and we're doing that through newsletters, social, but individual calls. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm conscious of time, but I did just want to ask you one last question around, your leaders of the industry, and I wanted to know what you thought around not just the future of your business, but the industry as a whole. Lots of people have predicted contraction, consolidation. They've predicted maybe investment coming in where some companies are really struggling. I mean, we heard this morning that Shearings was looking for options which could include a new buyer. So what's your view around the global industry, not just your own businesses? I'll start with you, Jo. Sorry.
I think there will be a new norm. I think in times of adversity like this, I think what happens from that is that good things come out of it. And I really do think there will be new businesses, entrepreneurs such as Ollie will be popping up with new business ideas, new opportunities. I think we'll really see that. I think we will see some streamlining and some consolidation. I think to Ollie's point, unfortunately, not everybody will make it through this, but all solid businesses will. And I think there will be some probably acquisition and a change in potentially how people want to engage, and some great efficiencies. Whilst we're all can't wait to get back to be able to socialise more, literally face to face, I have to say I think there's lots of great efficiencies in working in this way. I think meetings are more efficient. I think people get to the point more. I think there's a greater share of voice when you're actually all on a screen versus, in my world, very often being on the end of a conference call when people are in a room and you're not. So I'm saying to the team as well, when we go, just as well as our return to service for going back into the water, our return to service of going back into the office. And what's that going to look like? And what are we going to take with us now that will be better? So despite the unbelievable situation we're in, again, I actually think there's going to be some better ways of working, better businesses, and great new ideas that come out of it. But sadly, yes, there will be some failures.
Yeah, you'd agree with that, I imagine. Ollie, are you thinking of another? You're an entrepreneur. You've got another idea up your sleeve. Post-COVID business.
Not just yet. Not just yet. I'm not sure right now is the time to be starting travel business, but yeah, I'd agree. I think there's going to be contraction, and there will be consolidation, and there will be opportunities as well that arise from this. After every crisis, I mean, I started my business soon after 9/11, and so I remember it well, as everyone does. But I started in March 2002, and I remember people saying, "Well, don't do it. Whatever you do, the world is never going to be the same again." I remember hearing that over and over again. The world will never be the same again. People will not travel. They won't be going on airplanes. And although we're still living with the 9/11 hangover in terms of security at airports, generally speaking, the world is pretty similar. People, as Jo said, the desire to connect, the desire to see the world, desire to have new experiences is not going to go, and the desire therefore to travel will not go either. So it is easy to be fairly gloomy. I do think the world will return to some sense of normality, and those, as within a war, those who make the fewest mistakes will survive. We're not going to get everything right by any means, but I'm not too gloomy, especially for 2022.
Excellent. All right. How about you, Paul? Are you gloomy, or have you got signs of hope, green shoots?
I think short term it is gloomy, and I think anybody that's planning programs, it will be smaller, and the return will not be in a straight line. Everybody's worried about the virus returning in a different speed. The thing that people aren't talking about, and that what encourages me, is there will be something that helps to treat this, and once that's there, I'm absolutely believe that people will want to travel again, and travel much more meaningfully. I think the other thing that's that's really important is, as you see spring, we're in spring, and there's less traffic on the roads, the pollution is disappearing. When travel returns, people will be thinking about their footprint. One of my New Year's resolutions, I did 60 flights last year. I've done 4 this year, and I probably won't do another 2. And I think people will travel in a different way, will want to travel places and experience more, and it just connects people. So I'm optimistic about the medium and long term. I think we just need to get our programs and our businesses in the right shape for the restart. Yeah, okay. Which will be leaner and meaner and more creative.
Oh, very good. You've been reading Travel Weekly's website. I love that. Yes. Okay, good place to end on. Well, listen, we could carry on talking. I'd love to talk to you more. It's been fascinating to hear your views. Thank you all for joining us, because I know how busy you are, but I'm sure we'll meet again like this, and perhaps, and Joe, another 5 weeks time, see where we are then.
Well, not if I haven't had my hair done.
We're all in that. We've got that pain. Don't you worry. All right. Well, listen. Thanks for joining me. I'm really grateful. So to Ollie, to Paul, and to Joe, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.